Today we begin the chapter 9 in Tractate Berachot, page 54. The Daf Yomi today Leilu Nishmat Chana Bat Yosef. And my first comment is my first granddaughter. Her name is Hodaya. Hodaya, it's a special thanking Hashem, thanking God. It's like blessing to thank God. Meaning, if you look at the past week, a lot of things happen, such as sudden lightning, storming. Some places they have a tropical rain. So we need to have a specific blessing for all those special natural phenomena. Also, how about people who are very ill or ill and suddenly become feel better? People who are in prison, people who are a long-distance traveler, etc. So all this is in a category, it's called special occasion blessings, and it's under the category of Berakhot Hodaya, special thanking God for good. הרואה מקום שנעשו בו ניסים לישראל, if one sees a place where miracles were performed on behalf of Israel, he said, אומר ברוך שעשה ניסים לאבותינו במקום הזה. Bless who perform miracles for our forefathers at this place. רבנו עובדיה מברטנורה explained to us, and he said, כגון מעברות ים סוף ונחלי ארנון ומעברות הירדן. It's later the Gemarah elaborated that, but it's specifically those places that if you read in the Torah, places that God created a great miracle for public, for Anisa de Rabim, the majority of the nation have those miracles. Tosefta here comments, and he said it's on behalf of Rabbi Shimshon Mikutzi, היה רגיל לברך על הברקים, ברוך אתה השם אלוקינו מלך העולם, which means that he said that it should say those blessings with Shem and Malchut, with name of God. Baruch Ata, blessed are you God, Master of the universe. And that's basically halacha in the Reshut Chet, Seif Aleph, in 218 Seif Aleph, that we should say it with blessed are you Hashem, King of the universe, shekocho ugvurato malei olam. So that's one way. The derived on the reef, he hold you see it in the reef, page 44, Memdalet, that you don't mention Shem ul Malchut. You just say the bracha without Hashem Elokeinu Melech HaOlam, but we don't hold a halacha according to him. Makom shene'ekra mimenu avodah zara. If you see a place where idolatry was uprooted, אומר ברוך שעקר עבודה זרה מארצנו. If one sees a place where this type of avodah zara, idolatry, was basically uprooted, taken out, so he said this specifically talk about the land of Israel. So in Eretz Israel, which is an idolatrous shrine, was eliminated, was a blessing to our land. And you see also in the Shulchan Aruch that it states that upon seeing such an occasion outside of Eretz Israel, one should say who uprooted idolatry from this place. So Tosefta here said, he brought the Yerushalmi, he said, matnei kshenekra akum mikol Eretz Israel, which means that it's a very general term. It's a Melechet Shlomo cited this Tosefta. He said that you're referring to uprooted idolatry from our land. It's a general term. Now, על הזיקים ועל הזוועות ועל הברקים ועל הרעמים ועל הרוחות, which means upon seeing a meteors, in Hebrew you call it כוכבי Shavit, which is a striking natural phenomena. So one must recite the blessings that acknowledging the might and the power of God, Creator. So they use the word zikin. Zikin, Rav translated as a kochva de shavit, tearing the fabric. It's a few interpretation what is the zikin. Shulchan Aruch basically followed this Rashi that said that that's applied to meteors. But the Mishnah Brura didn't agree. He said that he's citing the Rambam, and he said that that it's a comet, it's something else. But anyway, in other words, he holds that the blessing for meteors and comets are basically the same. As Zvaot is this earthquake, and if it's based on Rashi, the Rambam said that Zvaot it's applied to something like very loud noise that occasionally occur in nature, not necessarily earthquake. It's important to mention Rabbeinu Yonah, because Rabbeinu Yonah had a lot of discussion over this Mishnah, and Melechet Shlomo cited him. So he held that applied to hurricane, which is accompanied by rain. So he called it Zvaot. It's like a ruchot, tempests. The Mishnah soon presented. Berakim is lightning. Ve'ala re'amim, the thunder. Is lightning that accompanied by thunder. Unfortunately, you see in some places in this country that people sometimes even die from that. So it's meaning that it's not lightning that generated just by heat, because that's common in the summer. The Mishnah Brura in 227 said it. But anyway, Aruchot is a tempest, which is the wind that blow with such a tremendous violence. Later the Gemarah explained it, like heavy tornadoes. So one should say, Baruch shekocho, Omer Baruch shekocho ugvurato malei olam. One should say, bless whose strength and might fill the world, which means on experiencing any of the after-mentioned natural event. So one must recite those blessings, which basically acknowledge God's might. These phenomena are basically manifestations of the power of God. God is basically one who formulated the laws of nature, and he produced these remarkable events. And the whole idea is to have the awe of amazement of the Creator. That's Abu Draham elaborate on that a person should have the awe of God. The blessing referred to basically God's power that He is filling the world, and that's also the Meiri and the Rashi replied that, and he says because these phenomena are basically visible and audible across the distances. Those of you who have a chance to be in Hawaii, one of the phenomenal things in Hawaii, they take you there to a tours. You ever been in Hawaii? Anybody?
Yeah,
okay, so anyway, so in Hawaii they take you to a special tour. They they take you underground to see, like, under the surface of the water what's going on. It's like a lab, large lab, and they show you over there. Listen carefully, that every 5 seconds there is an earthquake. The whole Hawaii, it's basically based on that. Which means people not even feel, people not even realize, and Baal Hanes Mekir Beniso, people not realize how a great miracle will live. You know, you think about land of Israel, Medinat Israel today, the country. So our grandchildren, 80 years from now will say, what a wonderful, great things, more than just a miracle happen. But we sometimes in our small eyes can say, what a bureaucracy. So it's something that we should recognize that every few seconds is an earthquake, and the world survived by somebody who control over that, and we should be thankful for that. Al harim ve'al hagvaot, upon seeing mountains and hills. So this the Mishnah refers to mountains and hills that possess something like extraordinary features. For example, their size. You go to the Great Canyon, right? Might, something that you don't see at the time. You go to Wyoming, it's reminding me what the Abu Draham described, like something that you said, wow. Aruch HaShulchan give example if you go to those mountains in Ararat in Turkey. So he said that's an example of something like it's phenomena. The same ve'al hayamim ve'al haneharot. If you see a yamim and neharot is like large seas and rivers. So here again the Mishnah speaks about extraordinary and something that is very exceptionally large, mighty river. Abu Draham, he cited the Beit Yosef that hold that has to be, not just small river you see around, the bay or Edgewater. You talk about something big. For example, the Rhine on the Volga, Aruch HaShulchan used. Tosefta, he comments that the Mishnah referred to the specifically 4 rivers that the Torah count in a creation. Pishon, that it's some people hold that that's the Nile, and Gihon, the Chidekel, some said that the Chidekel is the Tigris, and the Prat, some said that is Euphrates. Euphrates. Shulchan Aruch basically brought this basis of the Tosefta, and in the Kuf in 228, and he said the reason that the Tosefta mentioned only these 4 rivers, it's he said that it's a specific blessing, but Magen Avraham understand the Tosefta that it's a given example of something that is extraordinary river. He brought if you read you should read also the Machzit HaShekel. You have a beautiful explanation. That in conclusion that basically we're talking here about exceptional or something very different. And the same ve'al haneharot, which means the desert, ve'al midbarot, the desert. The term midbar, wilderness or desert, that's referring not just regular desert, but it's to be more clear. It's according to Eshel Abraham, he said in Orach Chaim 228 that that's not just regular desert; it has to be specifically wilderness. Omer Baruch Oseh Maaseh Bereshit. The person should say, "Blessed are you, God, who makes the work of creation," which means again after seeing such a landmarks. So you have to say a special praising to Hashem. This formation, which back the creation, warrant a blessing because they are inspire us to stand in awe of God, the Creator. In His creation or endure. Certainly, you see it in those places. Someone just came back from Alaska and told me that you see things that it's amazing. So if you talk about wilderness, you go to the west, you see things like that. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Haro'eh et hayam hagadol. Rabbi Yehuda said, if one sees the great sea, Omer Baruch she'asa et hayam hagadol. You should say, blessed are you made the great sea. What does that mean? So Rabbi Yehuda maintained that one does not recite the same blessing who makes the work of creation for the great sea the same as other seas, because the size, the significance of the great seas, Rabbi Yehuda assigned a special blessing which refers specifically to the. So that's what Rashi said here. just as the rabbis signal a special blessing for bread and wine because their significance. So Rashi hold, and the Rashba also quote this idea that the Mishnah said earlier chutz min hayayin or chutz min hapat, excluding the wine or the bread. So that's the whole idea, that special blessing for the great sea. בזמן שראו אותו לפרקים, there's a condition, he said that it's only when you see it in interval, which means you don't recite the blessing if you recently cited the Deut see that the Gemarah said later that it has to be in the past of 30 days, otherwise it's not regular, it has to be in interval. על הגשמים ועל הבשורות טובות, on rains, on hearing a good news, that good reported, Omer, one should say, Baruch Atov HaMetiv, blessed are you who good and does good. So basically, it's like God is the source of the all fortune. You have news of the birth of a son, for example, and report that one is acquire a inheritance that he or she did not anticipate it. So the Mishnah referred to a rainfall, for example, which come after a sustained period of drought. So after this time, rainfall is an event calling a formal, special expression of thanksgiving. Raman notes that this is not customary to recite the blessing for rain. He explained that this is because we live in countries where it rains regularly, so we don't usually experience a situation that is no rain, which make rainfall particularly a joyful event. But in the event that it's a really situation like that it's a long time with no rain, like those countries, so one must certainly recite the blessing upon rainfall regardless of where we live. That's why the Mishnah in chapter 2 said. So for example, a situation of a very bad year in Eretz Israel or something like that. So he said, Baruch Atov HaMetiv ve'al shmuot ra'ot. If someone hear a bad news, a bad things he heard, so he said, Baruch Dayan HaEmet, blessed are you, God, who is the true judge. It's a expression of faith, and God is it's a good in every misfortune, and you're thanking God even al shmuot ra'ot, things that bad. Rabbeinu Yonah said, and you read it also from his students, that since we believe that everything is from God, so what basically we said, the Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah also elaborate on the Reish Kav Bet 222, that we don't know our future, we don't know what's good or not. Things that appear bad can be blessing in the sky. Think that it's awesome, it can turn around and be the opposite. Some people, the worst curse was winning a lottery. So therefore, if someone has something that is a bad news, simply we don't know, so we thanking God because we don't know. בנה בית חדש וקנה כלים חדשים, אומר ברוך שהחיינו. If someone bought a new home, a new house, Mishnah Berurah said purchasing the home in 223 said purchase very special utensils. If you get a new Lamborghini, so Baruch She'echeyanu, he said the Birkat She'echeyanu. I assume you know the joke about the difference between Reform Conservative and Orthodox when it's come to the bracha of She'echeyanu. You know that story? The story goes, and I'm just saying it as a famous joke, that someone went to an Orthodox rabbi and he said, I bought a new Lamborghini, give me a bracha. So the rabbi is asking, what is Lamborghini? So he said, oh, rabbi doesn't know what is Lamborghini? Forget it. He went across the street to the conservative temple. And he said, Rabbi, I bought a new Lamborghini, give me a bracha. So the rabbi said to him, well, you bought a new Lamborghini, and you want me to give you a bracha, blessings. What is one has to do with the other? So he said, Rabbi, it's a new car, it's a beautiful car. He says, all right, if you give $10,000, I give you a bracha. He says, forget it. He went to the Reform Temple, and he said, Rabbi, I bought a new Lamborghini. Can you give me a bracha? The rabbi said, what do you mean by saying bracha? מברך על הרעה מעין הטובה ועל הטובה מעין הרעה. It's just a joke. No offense. One recite a blessing on a calamity, which is an aspect of good, and ועל הטובה מעין הרעה, and on a favorable occurrence, which is an aspect of bad. As we said, you never know what is bad and what is good, etc. The Gemarah said even a person put his hand in his pocket and he intend to pull out for example a dollar to put in a tzedakah box, and there's nothing there, it's in the other pocket. It's already like form of reduction of punishment in the world to come. Just a small example. That's a type of suffering. The Baal Tanya elaborate on that, and he said that anything that a person suffers, even the smallest things, it's something that in the long run is good for him. Likutei Moharan, the great Rab Nachman ben Feiga, the great Breslov Rebbe, explained that is such a thing that is no bad before him and Ramil Fanav, because God, everything is good. So therefore, when we use the word Levavecha, Ve'avta et Hashem Elokecha Suni, we talk about too bad, it means that since God is only good, so even things that appear not so great, it's good, even you see it in such a way that it looks bad. הצועק לשעבר, הרי זו תפילת שווא. If one prays and he cry out regarding to the past, this is a prayer in vain. If one prays that God alter a past occurrence, so his prayer is in vain, for the past cannot be changed. Right? So what, you're praying for something that happened, that you have no control over that? It's like wasting your time for praying. Ketzad, how so? What's the example of prayer that one just say it and it's in vain? Ha'ita ishto me'uberet. If wife was already pregnant, ואמר, יהי רצון שתלד אשתי זכר. I wish that my wife will give a birth to a baby boy, to a male. She's already pregnant. What type of prayer is this? הרי זו תפילת שווא. It's praying in vain. What are you praying for? What's the purpose of this prayer? She's already pregnant. The Gemarah said that bat chila siman yafeh lebanim, that for example if a person have the first female baby girl, it's a good sign for further boys. Those who have Baruch Hashem a large family knows that the girls are tremendous. It's a blessing. Some people have these misconceptions, thinking Ben Zachar is the most. It's not necessarily correct in the eye of halacha. היה בא בדרך ושמע, you look at me, I'll tell you a story. I'm sorry, today I have too many stories. When I was a kid, it's a fellow, Yehye, he's a Sephardi guy, went to my father. He looks like the world is upside down. My father just taking off his tefillin, he's standing online, people who come and ask my father questions. And that guy is standing, and my mother was standing next to him. And he goes and he said, "Oh, I'm so embarrassed." So my parents said, "My father, what happened, Yechia?" "Oh, I can't tell you." He started tearing. What happened? He's in a shuk. He's in the in the market selling, he has like a little booth in a shuk. He says, what happened? To make long story short, oh, Rabbi Rebbetzin, it's a baby girl. And he has tears. And my mom let him have it in such a way. She said, what's wrong with you? She said, it's such a blessing. And my father was like, lash on him and says, well, it's a huge blessing. What's wrong with you? He's like, I'm speaking, 40 years ago, that guy is like, Ben Zachar, has to be a baby boy. היה בא בדרך ושמע כל צווחה בהיר. One of my best friends have 6 girls. If one was coming doing the road and he heard the sounds of screaming in the city, which means the calamity that occurred somewhere in the city and the screams of the victims reached him, ואמר, and he said, oh, יהי רצון שלא יהיו לו בני ביתי. May it will be that it's not my household. So what's wrong with you? No, the prayer seeks to change which has already occurred. So it's a calamity already fallen, and those screaming. So what they said is, if the victim, God forbid, is part of his household, so his prayer cannot change the fact. הרי זו תפילת שווא. So it's a prayer in vain. הנכנס לכרך מתפלל 2. Earlier we said that in the Mishnah that Rabbi Nechunah ben Akana said that sometimes a person need divide A. So he said one who enter the city, he should pray twice. Large city, Tosefta Yom Tov say. So what is the two prayer? אחת בכניסתו ואחת ביציאתו, one upon his entry and one upon his departure, which means before entering the city the traveler recite a special prayer and that he enter the city safely, and before leaving the city recite another prayer. That's what Rashi said when he departed peacefully. Ben Azai omer 4, Ben Azai said 4 times, 2 בכניסתו ו2 ביציאתו. He said it's in addition to Tana Kama, that it's a 4 prayer. Entering the safety, 2, leaving 2. And then he said, ונותן הודעה לי שעבר, he give thanks for the past. So Melechet Shlomo said that that's part of what he said earlier, Ben Azai, that he explained that the past, וצועק, and he pray for לעתיד לבוא, he pray for the future. He pray for what already transpired and the future. חייב אדם לברך על הרעה כשם שהוא מברך על הטובה. A person is obligated to thank God for things that bad, the same way as a thanking thing for good, which means Rabbi Dr said, when you make dayana emet on something that it's a bad, you should accept it the same way. It's called in our language lekablinu besimcha, that the person should take it properly. שנאמר, as it said, ואהבת את השם אלוקיך, you should love your Lord your God בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. בכל לבבך בשני יצריך, with all your heart, meaning with both of your inclinations. ביצר טוב וביצר רע, with a good inclination, with a bad inclination. לבבך, it's a 2 bet, it's not libcha. That it's the second one is like the heart. That we should love God with both hearts. We should that's a manifest his love by serving God in both inclinations. ובכל נפשך אפילו נוטל את נפשך, with all your soul, even he takes your soul. This is obligation to love God, required one prepare a sacrifice, his life for the sake of God, and that's what we said at the end of Yom Kippur. So and the last part is ובכל מאודיך, with all your resources, First Perush is Bechol Mamoncha, with all your wealth, which means that there is time that you have to express with your money the love of God. Specifically, sometimes a person needs to give up all his possession rather than to transgress any specific negative commandment. The Ramah in Yoredea on 157 elaborate that in some cases a person needs to do it. It's a Yarek V'al Yavor. If a person have a choice between idol worshipping or giving away all his money, he needs to give away all his money. For example, דבר אחר, another explanation, בכל מאודיך, מאודיך, בכל מידה ומידה שהוא מודד לך, whatever measure, it's מידה, that God made out with you, הווה מודה לו במאוד מאוד. You have to thank God greatly. One must praise God whether he sent him good fortune or he's suffering. This is a interpretation cooperate with the Mishnah ruling that one must recite the blessing for unfavorable events with the same sincerity and frame mind that he recited blessing for a favorable occasion. Tosefta Yontov explained that that's a crucial part of our faith. Again, today I'm full of stories. One time when I was studying years back at the university, we have a professor who is a German Jew, but very extremely cold personality, wonderful teacher, very famous professor. And we are in the class, and Israelis in the class, they are all one group together. And one of the students, the child of that student was involved in an accident, and that daughter was in a state of coma. So everyone was praying for her. And one day, the father of that child, which is now a very famous doctor, walk in the classroom, just jump in, open the door at the middle of the class, and he says, she opened her eyes, she started talking, and ran around the classroom in the middle of class and started hugging everybody, and everybody said, oh, thank God, thank God, thank God, and they're so happy and so glad. And then that person ran to the professor, and he held him, and he was standing with his full decorum at the top of the classrooms, and he was a weird professor because he wearing suit and tie at the hot summer. That's a old-fashioned, and especially for Israeli with the hot water. So he ran to him and he held him and he said, Professor so and so, she opened her eyes, thank God. I never forget the reaction. Professor looked straight and he said, let me ask you a question. So silent. He says, if everything turned around the opposite way, do you thank God the same way as you're thanking God now? I never forget that. לא יקל האדם את ראשו כנגד שער המזרח. A person may not behave light-heartedly, light his head in the eastern gate of the temple, the gate of the eastern wall in the surrounding the temple. It's a שער המזרחי. There is a special law of respect that dictate and behave in particular place standing in the opposite to that gate. So they say the person should not have a kalut rosh. Kalut rosh, it's Aruch explained it's like a person have a light-hardened, and we derive from that also the way that we should behave in a certain sanctity in a synagogue. Why? שהוא מכוון כנגד בית קודש הקודשים, because it's a light opposite of the chamber of the Holy of Holies. The gate of the eastern wall of the Temple Mount was in a direct line of both the eastern gate of the outer court of the temple, Ezrat Hashem, and the inner courtyard, which is called Ezrat Israel. So this gate, in turn, was the position directly opposite of the doorway of the Ulam, of the Eichal. So it's the whole idea that you are light-hearted in those places. You have to give respect. לא ייכנס אדם להר הבית במקלו ובימין עלו. Why may not enter to the temple mount with his staff? Again, act of respect. ובפונדתו, with his shoes. ובאבק שעל רגליו. It's a sorry, ובמקלו with his staff. ובמנעלו with his shoe. ובפונדתו with his money belt. ובאבק שעל רגליו with the dust that is upon his feet. It's again, it's act of disrespectful to enter the temple mount while carrying the one staff or money belt without washing his feet. Wearing shoes is not disrespectful, but it's nevertheless the great sanctity of the temple mount dictates that it be should be entered barefoot. You see, many other nations took it, the idea from us. God is commanded Moses to approach the burning bush. He asked him to, in the book of Shemot, he asked him to take off his shoes. So pundato, it's basically money belt. It's based on Rashi later. Some say that pundato, Rambam hold that it's a undergarment, like undershirt. Velo yasenu kapandaria. A person not make a shortcut, so one may not enter the temple mount simply to shorten his route. So someone asked me here about the chapel. If you need to go from the nursery school to the kitchen, can you pass by the chapel? My answer is no. That's exactly what we learn from here. You don't make it a shortcut. So what happens if you are in a rush? So you sit on the chapel, you say the pasuk, Ach tzadikim yudu lishmecha yishvu yisharim et panecha, for example. You say the pasuk, the same pasuk as you said before you leave the chapel. You have to sit for a second and say this line. And then you're like praying, and then you continue on. But we're not allowed, because the Shulchan Aruch in Orach Chaim 151 said clearly that this law also apply to a shul, to a synagogue, that one may not a synagogue as a shortcut. And the same urkika mikal vachomer, a spitting, which means it's a forbidding there on account of kal vachomer, which argument. In other words, one may certainly not spit while the temple mount. It's a prohibition is derived from the kal vachomer, which means the argument is follows. If wearing shoes is forbidden in temple mount, although wearing them does not show disrespect, so how about spitting, which is disrespectful behavior, for sure is prohibited. So the Gemarah later explained it. If a person must spit while in temple mount, he should do it into his clothes or something like that, but not there. It's disrespectful. And then the Mishnah concluded, and they said, Kol chotmei Berachot sheba mikdash, those who conclude the blessing apply to the first temple era, before the revision instituted by Ezra and the men of the Great Assembly. So they, היו אומרים מן העולם, they conclude the formula of blessing in the temple from the world. מן העולם. מי שקלקלו המינים, when it was a heretic, ואמרו אין עולם אלא אחד, the heretic corrupted the faith, and they said, oh, it's only one world, there's no olam haba. These heretics said that there's only one world, Rashi said the present one. So they denied the whole idea of resurrection of the dead and the existence of the world to come. So it took place in the time of Ezra and his court, the men of the Great Assembly, and the beginning of the era of the Second Temple, because it was at that time that the heretics started spreading heresy. There are those who say that that's Shitkinu Atzdokim, that's applied, that the Sadducees corrupted. Anyway, Hitkinu, the rabbis instituted שיהיו אומרים מן העולם ועד העולם, from the world and until the world, which means to combat the spread of the heretic philosophy, right, and the non-believers. Ezra and his court revised and extended concluding formula using by those reciting in the temple, adding that the word until the world, it's like applied to the world to come too. והתקינו, and also they instituted שיהיה האדם שואל בשלום חברו בשם, that a man should greet his fellow with the name of God, in full name of God. So when you greet someone, there is a certain way. But here you bring the standard greeting. What is the standard greeting? You see another Yid, you said Shalom Aleichem, peace unto you. So that's reflect a rabbinical enactment that the term Shalom is one of the name of God. That's what the Ritva said. שנאמר והנה בועז בא מבית לחם. They said in the book of Ruth that Boaz came from Beit Lechem, his name of place. ויאמר לקוצרים השם עמכם. He greeted all his employee and he said, God is with you. ויאמרו לו יברכך השם. And they respond, may Hashem will be with you. In my book, Ruth Talk, I elaborate on that. But here in short, this verse, which described the exchange of greeting between Boaz and his worker, that part, the whole idea that God's name is part of the greeting. Another source, ואומר השם ממך גיבור החיל. And he stated that Hashem is with you, mighty man in valor, which is contained the greeting that was by when Gideon in the Tanakh met the angel. So that's in the book of Judges, chapter 6. So he instructed Gideon, the angel, in the name of God, to wage war against Midian. And it's also a scriptural source that the rabbi based the enactment of including God's name in greeting. That's what Rashi said. Also, I would like to share with you the Rabbi Visablum Bartanura, he asked a question. He said, "Bishmo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu ולא אמרינן מזלזלו בכבודו של מקום בשביל כבוד הבריות להוציא שם שמיים עליו." You should not think that using God's names in order to give respect to people. Don't think that. We learn from the story of Boaz that not. And Rabbi asked, but maybe v'chitema Boaz midadei nafshei hakavid. Maybe you said that Boaz made it by himself. So you learn from the second source. Why you need two sources? So he said that you learn the second source from Gideon, that it's something that and especially the way that the malach, the angel, said to him. And if you are still doubted, Rabbi Dr. said, and you said, this is not a source because that was exceptional story, he said, ואומר אל תבוז כי זקנה אימך. You should state in Proverbs, do not shame her though your mother be old, which means do not shame the elders of Israel, which is the mother, by refusing to rely on their practices. For their practices are based on scripture, and may certainly the valid save precedents. So that's very important, that you should not belittle. So it's all of that good sources, but he concluded and said the best source, that's what Rabbi Dr. said. He said, ואומר עת לעשות להשם הפרו תורתך. The verse says in the Psalm 199, is a time sometimes to act for God, they have nullified your law, which means the Mishnah cited the verse as the scriptural basis for Boaz's behavior, which means that he said that there's sometimes a person looks like he violates Torah law, Torah commandments, but the way that it should be, it's basically Ora'at Shah, a certain time that he needs to do it. For example, a story with Boaz, Rabbi Natan אומר, הפרו תורתך עת לעשות להשם. Rabbi Natan says, they have nullified your law because it's time to act for God, which means Rabbi Natan explained how these basically pasuk serve as a basis of action of Boaz. So he basically said that Rabbi Dr. elaborated on that, and he said that פעמים שמבטלים דברי תורה כדי לעשות להשם. There are sometimes you need to annul the Torah, you need to go, looks like a different than Torah, and nullify the law in order to act to Hashem. So it's in order to fulfill God's will, you allow a certain time to do something that appears to be nullification of God's law, but it's not in the long run. The Gemarah continued and said, Menan Emile, from where you derive when he said Aroe Makom Shenasa Bo Nes, a place that created a great miracle, the Mishnah said, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, the Amar Kra, the Pasuk said, Vayomer Yitro Baruch Hashem Asher Yitzil, which means here Yitro speaks about something that happened in the past, but he's thanking God for that past, which means even that things happened not recently but past. So the Meiri said that this type of performance occurred in the past, like we said in the Mishnah, thunder, all kind of things. He deserve a blessing. So because otherwise, past is like, okay, it's past. So why you need to praise God for that? It's already happened. But Yitro talk about miracle that happened in the past, and Rashi explained, Asher Yitzil Etchem Mevarchim, we make a blessing of something that occurred in the past from that source. So the Gemarah asks, Anisa de Rabim Mevarchinan, Anisa de Yachid Lo Mevarchinan. Some take it as a statement, which means upon something that happened to a large amount of people, Rabim, we make the blessing. But for individual, we do not make the blessing. So they said, V'ha'hu gavra. So they challenge that. You tell me that only apply to public but not individual. Public miracle. Hahu gavra davak hachazil ba'avar yamina. So ba'avar yamina, Rashi said that is the name of a place in Prat, in Euphrates. That Yamina, it's like a south. Nafal alei arya, a lion fell upon him. It abar linitza v'tatzal minei. It was a miracle and he was saved. So it's individual, right? Ata lekami de Rava, he came before the great sage Rava. V'amar le, and he said to him, Kol eimat dematit lehatam brich she'asa li nes b'makom hazeh. Every time Rava instructed him and says, every time you go to that place, you should say, blessed are you God who performed the miracle for me in this place. And he give here a list. Umar brei Ravina avakaiz pipikta deravod utzvacha lemaya. It's the name of another rabbi that he once go through a valley of a aravot, and it was a thirst of water. It's like Rashi said, it was a very thirst. Tzameh lemaya. It aved lenisa. Suddenly you have a miracle. Ibra le'ena demaya v'ishtei. It's like a well of water was created for him, and he drank from it. V'tuzim nachada avakazil berisketa demchoza. V'nafal gam lapritza. It jumped on him suddenly a wild camel. It parka le'ashita. The wall that was nearby broke apart for him. Al legavei, he went inside. Kimat al aravot brich. When he came to the aravot, he made a blessing. Baruch she'asa li nes ba'aravot u'bagamal. Blessed are you God who performed a miracle for me in aravot and with the camel. Kimat al eristeta le'mechoza brich. When he came to that place, it's called mechoza. He said the blessing. Baruch she'asa li nes ba'gamal u'ba'aravot. Again, God make a miracle for the camel and the aravot. So what do you see from all these sources? You see that Amrei, Anis, so how you, in one hand you say that it's only for public. Here all the sources you see that you make a blessing even for individual. So he said, Anisa de Rabin, if something miracle to a masses, Kule alma mechai v'debruchi. Everyone is obligated to make a blessing. Anisa de Yachid, for miracle that happened to individual, Ihu, he is the only one chayav lebruche. He is the only one who needs to make a blessing, but not other. So, for example, the Rif explain that for example, if someone has a miracle for him, perform for him. So, the question is, what about his future generation? You know, after that, he have children. So he hold, and the same Rav Hai Gaon and others hold, that his son and his grandson need to make a blessing as well, because of the father survives, they later on born, and therefore they need to be thankful for that. Others hold even for a bom uvhak, if someone is his Rebbe, a person who said Baruch she'asa nes leRebbe b'makom hazeh, that blessed God will make a great miracle for my teacher in this place. The Rashba hold that a person needs to say in that language, and there are those who said if it's his father, a person should say Baruch she'asa nes le'Abba, blessed God will make a miracle for my father. So I must, as a side note, tell you that today I'm full of side notes, right? That one of the teacher of my brother-in-law and a good friend, it's Rosh Yeshiva of Beit Matityahu. It's a yeshiva in Bnei Brak called Beit Matityahu. His name is Rabbi Baruch Weisblum. So he was at my wedding. We are very close. So one time there is a road around Jerusalem. Those of you who visit Jerusalem, they know that there is several very high mountain and valley close to Jerusalem. So it was a miracle with the car that he was there and he was saved. It was, I can't tell you how many times I saw horrible accidents there in those, it's called Kastel, and around that area of Mevaseret Zion. It's very close to Jerusalem. So Baruch Weisblum, every time he passed by that place as a passenger in the car, he always said that individual blessing. Bless you God who will make a miracle for me in this place. So some people ask, since he's their Rebbe, if they're obligated to say the blessing in that place as well, and it was a discussion another time. Tanu Rabbanan, haro'eh ma'abrot hayam, if one see a place of a crossing at the Red Sea, u'ma'abrot hayarden, it's all in the biblical, the Jordan places that our people went passed by, and Rashi said makom shavru Yisrael b'yam suf, or מעברות הירדן בימי יהושע, it's all the biblical time. Joshua, אבני אלגביץ' במורד בית חורון, Rashi said בימי יהושע, that was time of Yehoshua, Joshua, that it was a stone of אלגביש, ואבן שביקש לזרוק אוג מלך הבשן על ישראל. This is a very famous story. Later we explained that Og, the biblical Og, want to throw stones on Israel. ואבן שישב עליה משה בשעה שעשה יהושע מלחמה בעמלק. If you read in the Torah, the Exodus, at the end of Parshat Beshalach, that the special stone that Moses set, the biblical Moses set, while his student Yehoshua went to wage a war against the evil nation of Amalek. ואשתו של לוט, the place that Lot's wife turned to a pillar of salt. וחומת יריחו שנבלעה במקומה, and the wall of Jericho which swallowing in its place, they sank to the ground. על כולן צריך שייתן הודאה ושבח לפני המקום. A person should give a praising to God for that. Later the Gemarah explained. בישלמה מעברות הים, so now we ask, we challenge us. If you tell me מעברות הים, the Red Seas, I understand, דכתיב, ויבואו בני ישראל בתוך הים ביבשה, that the children of Israel crossed, was the water on both sides and they survived. So that's, I understand that, you need to be thankful, it's a huge miracle. מעברות הירדן, the place according to the Jordan River, דכתיב, ויעמדו הכהנים נושאי ארון ברית השם בחרבה. They said that the Kohanim was standing at the middle, the Kohanim, the bearer of the ark, they stand in the covenant of God, the heart of the Jewish people was the holy art, and וכל ישראל עוברים בחרבה עד שתמו כל הגוי לעבור את הירדן, until they standing in a dry ground. It's at the middle of the Jordan River. Now they have a dry ground and they crossing this Jordan River. It's a huge miracle. Read in chapter 3 in book of Joshua, it's a huge miracle that the Jordan River was basically split. אלא מעברות נחלי ארנון מנהלן. But the whole canyons of Arnon, how do you know that? That's again, it's a biblical. They said, על כן יאמר, דכתיב, על כן יאמר בספר מלחמות השם, את והב בסופה ואת הנחלים ארנון. They said in the book of Numbers, chapter 21, Et vahev besufa. They said in the book of war of God is like a chronicle, Et vahev besufa. So the idea is there are two names here. It's called two name of people. One it's called a Et, and the other one is Hev. It's like Vav. It's the connectedness letter between the two, which is, the Gemarah explains, Shnei metzora imayu. It was the two lepers, and the people who carry this disease. Dehavu mehalchin besof machane Israel. So they basically, if people have the tzarat, so they afflicted in that tzarat is a disease, so they cannot be part. They have to be in an isolated place. Read the story of Miriam in the Torah and more. So those people was there in the side, and the Bach Ed, and he said, Atu Amoraya Sulau benachale Arnon Avdelehu, which means those Amorai came, those they are standing there, and they Avdelehu Nekirota. That was a huge miracle. What is the miracle? They made a cave in the mountain for themselves. Okay, וטשן בהון. So Rashi said, מעברות נחלי הארנון, עמוק בין שתי ערים גבוהים. It was a huge place between the two mountains. So the nation of Israel need to pass by this tremendous amount of mountain. כי חלפי ישראל הכה נקטלון. So what these people wants to do, it was like an ambush. The people from Arise, they're waiting for them. They're waiting, and they want, when the children of Israel will pass, they plan to arrows, boulders upon them when they pass by. That's what Rashi said. Children of Israel not even aware of that. So, ולא הבו ידי דהב אהרון מזגי כמאוד ישראל. The only one thing these people didn't realize, that the Aaron, the Holy Ark, was they traveling with them, which is the protection for the Jewish people. So it's a huge miracle happened, and the mountain before the Ark was basically leveled, which is a huge miracle. Kevan de'at Aaron, when they this canyons of Arnon approached for the ark, idabku ture ba'ade adade, the two sides cleave together, vekatlinun, so they kill these Amorites, venachat demayu l'nachale Arnon, and the blood came out to the canyon of Arnon. Ki atu et vahev, when these two lepers came there, meaning, according to Tzlach, his name is Et, and the other one his name is Vahev. The other one's name is Hev. These two people came there. Chazu dama de kanafik mi bein ture. They realized that there's a blood coming between the two mountains. Atu ve'amru lo Israel. They came before the children of Israel and they said, you know what happened? These two guys planning to have an ambush on you, and miracle happened, and these two mountains matched together, and they died. So the people are so happy. They say a song of praise. Shira, by the way, there are those who do Perek Shira, the song of all the animals and the nature, and many people hold that if you do it 40 days, you can prayer will answer. Anyway, so they say the song of praise. Hainu dechtiv, and that's exactly what's said in the pasuk. Ve'eshed hanechalim asher nata לשבט אר ונשאר לגבול מואב. In the book of Bamidbar, number 21, they said, and the outpouring of the canyons, which is a vir to dwell, leaned against the border of Moab. So Rashi said, he explained that that's exactly what happened, that it's a miracle by having these two mountain match. And then he said, Avnei El Gavish, the stone of El Gavish, descend to Bet Horon. My Avnei El Gavish, what is that stones? תנא אבנים שעמדו על גב איש. אל גביש is גב איש, the back of a person. וירדו על גב איש. And came down for the sake of man. גב איש, back of person. עמדו על גב איש. What does that mean, the sake of man? זה משה, that's applied to משה רבנו, biblical Moses. דכתיב, והאיש משה, ענב מאוד מכל האדם אשר על פני האדמה. They said in the book of Numbers 12 that Moses was tremendously humble. וכתיב, and it's also written, ויחדלו הקולות ומטרנו את הארצה. When we read about the great plagues, one of them, it is said about the hail that was seized, so they said the rain did not reach the earth. All these stones that falling was stopped. So what does that mean? ירדו על גב איש, the later descendants for the sake of man. Who is it? That's again, it's a allegorical, like metaphorical, but express, it's a reference to whom? זה יהושע, that's a biblical Joshua. דכתיב, it's written, קח לך יהושע בן נון איש אשר רוח בו ושמחת ידך עליו. They said in במדבר, in Numbers 27, that you take a man of his spirit. That's applied to Joshua, was as a man that have a spirit. וכתיב, ויהי בנוסן מפני בני ישראל במורד בית חורון, והשם השליך עליהם אבנים גדולות מן השמיים עד הזקה, וימותו רבים אשר מתו באבני הברד מאשר הרגו בני ישראל בחרב. That's in the chapter 10 of book of Joshua, that when they fled before Israel, there was descent Beit Horon, and it's a tremendous amount of stones fell there. If you go around that area, for example, you go in around Jerusalem, you see those big mountains. Some places like close to tailstones, you see a sign that be careful because it's falling stones. You go to upstate New York, you see these type of things, that is falling stones. So Tosefta add here, and he said, וכן כל אדם מברך על ניסו אף על פי שאינו ניכר מתוך המקום. You derive from that another important concept. The person should thank God for his miracle, even you go to a place that you don't see any specific huge happening there, like huge mountain and something that very close that stone can fall. Just if it's a miracle happened to someone in a certain location, even that place not appear to naturally create miracles or potential for miracles. Here individually need to say a thanking God, blessing God for that location, in that location, for his miracle. The next miracle in the Braita, אבן שביקש אוג מלך הבשן לזרוק על ישראל. Before we go to the Braita itself, we need to know two schools of thought in the Talmud. One school of thought is the literal. You just take the story as is, and you take it as a story, in a sense, a real name and a real numbers and a real. The other one, it's a metaphor. It's a metaphysical, it can be allegorical, it's something else. That the numbers and the stories is just a basic for illumination or illustration of something else. Here they talk about a stone. It was a huge king in the Torah. His name is Og. He was king of Bashan. And according to the Torah, he was a survivor, which means he was the one who basically hold the Noah Ark from outside, and he survived, and according to some sources he was the most highest, biggest man ever, huge person. It's hard to give a measure in our time, but it turned to be against the ancient Israelites, and they said that he throws stones, which according to some it was a huge one that wants to kill them. But again, first let's go literally and then we go a little figuratively. Gemarah Gmirelo. Now we elaborate on that. Amar, Og said, and again said to himself, it's resonates something that it has to be more figuratively. But let's see what he said. Machane Yisrael, Kama Havei. So Og said, let's see how much is how big is the camp of Israel. Rashi, Og chashav ken belibo. Og thought this way in his heart. Machane Israel tlata parsei, the camp of Israel have 300 פרסאות, פרסה it's like a measure of square, דכתיב במדבר למ"ג, book numbers chapter 33, ויחנו מבית הישימות עד אבל השיטים. בית הישימות עד אבל השיטים it's a huge distance, so that's the size of the camp. ואמר רבא בר חנה, name of a sage, לדידי חזי לי דוכתא, I really saw that place, והווה תלת פרסאוכה ותלת פרספותיה. That's Gemarah in Eruvin, in page 55, Rashi said, tells us that it's a large size. So therefore he said, הזיל ועקר תורה בתלת הפרסי ואיש דעלהו ויקטלינו. Og wants to kill, and again it's weird, but basically in a literal sense you want to take the stones and kill the people. Azal akar tura bataltei parse. He went and uprooted mountain. That was the 3 parsaot squares. Looks like a fiction movie, you know, but that's the way to describe here. Just in a narrative. Ve'aite al reishei, and he put it at the top of his head. Ve'aite kutshe brichu alei kamtzei, and the Holy One just brought it upon him. It's like Haman, he planning to hang Mordechai, and he was hung. How? So he said, Kamtzei, so there's the 2 perushim. One, according to Rashi, Kamtzei is aunt. According to Aruch, it's called locust. Like one, it's a nasty one, right? Dangerous one. And unekavua. So imagine Og holding a huge stone, and those locusts or ant broke those stones, and basically it's tore that hole, venachid betzavarei, and it fell around his neck. Hava bai lemishlefa, he wants to move it from himself. Mashchei shinelai gisa ve'adchad gisa, his tooth, it's in both sides. Velo matze lemishlefe, and he could not remove it. So far we see the literal way, which is something like Og really carry a stone, and that stone he broke upon himself. But the measurement and the numbers look like lishna, like language of exaggeration. So because it's hard to believe any human can do such a thing, especially if you tell me that the nation will spread in such a long distance. And so there is 2 school of thoughts among the Mefarshim. There is one school of thought that hold like the Rashba. Rashba hold that the story here, it's not literal, it's a more allegorical, and he elaborated and he said that this apply to a certain measurement, like when you're talking in the numbers and you're talking this, it's a description of some type of not really physical war, but it's some type of a implication of war. In other words, it was like a war, but expresses toward these metaphorical things. It's like allegory. V'hainu dichtiv, and that's what he said. Shinei reshaim shibarta. King David said in the book of Psalms, you broke the teeth of those evils. Psalm 3. So, for example, the idea of uprooted mountains. So Rashba said that that's applied to the mountain, that the special merit that Abraham, our ancestors, went at the top of the mountain to bind his Isaac. That was we read in Rosh Hashanah. So that is like bring merit, and Og try to use his merit against their merit. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, אמר Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, מה דכתיב שיני רשעים שיברת? Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish asked what King David meant when he used the word the teeth of the wicked you have broken. אל תקראי שיברת, אלא שריבבת. Don't say that you have broken. You said that you have extended. So Rashi here said, לשון השתרבובי, השתרבוב, ירדו וגדלו למטה, which means that it's like his tooth went all over him. Now, soon you see that not everyone go by that interpretation. There is another school of thought. How? You see, Moshe Kama Avaya, our ancestor Moshe Rabbeinu, how tall he was. So the answer is Eser Amot. Amah, in a simple way, this is the measure of Amah. But it means that he was tall. Shakil Narga Bar Eser Amin. So he took an axe that was in a 10 amot long. Shavar Eser Amim. He jumped 10 amot upward. Umachye Bekarsulei Vekatlei. And he just touched the Og ankle and he killed him again. So, simple way, literal way, it's like he jumped. Looks very hard to comprehend. Allegorically, the Rashba said that that's applied to merit of nation of Israel that represented by Moshe Rabbeinu, by Moses, versus the merit of Og that he has merit in the early stage of his life. However, there is another school of thought. The Maharsha speaks at length something in a very different school of thought. Usually, as much as the Maharsha go by the Agadeta, this is way above the scope of this study, but I just will share with you the abbreviation. Maharsha said is based on the book called Yetzirah, which is the early Kabbalah book. You know, in the world of Kabbalah, it was a stages. There are books like Sefer Echalot, Sefer Yetzirah, all these books, Sefer Atmuna, Sefer Abahir, all these books attributes to the Talmudic sages of the 2nd, 3rd, 4th century. Later, in the development of Kabbalah world, we go further for the era of the 13th century with Provence and Girona, with a great Kabbalistic between Rabbi Chazdai ben Kashkash, Rabbi Yosef Albo, or the great Nachmanides. And then you have the world of the more practical Kabbalah, which is the 16th century in the Sefard, like Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, Rabbi Chaim Vital, with the leadership of the Ari, etc. The Ashkenazi, Yitzchak Luria Ashkenazi, etc. So that's a development of Kabbalah. So Maharsha used the book of Yetzirah, which is the very early stage of Kabbalah, to say that all this story between Og and Moshe Rabbeinu, it's for sure Kabbalistic terms. Again, it's beyond the scope of this study. We are just have a, you call it in French, vignette, right? Vignette. Just a tip. So in the world of Kabbalah, they said, in the Sefer Yetzirah, that at that time it was a measurement of good deeds or good side versus kochot hatum'ah, which is the power of the impurity. There is a concept in Kabbalah, many Kabbalistic mention that. You see it in the Hasidic books earliest. It's called Ze Leumat Ze Asa Elokim. That the Almighty created two entities. As Isaiah said, He created light and He created also darkness. So it is, Og represent here all the forces of impurity. Forces of impurity comes from in general from a bad deed, which means a person created by himself toward his violations, sins, transgressions, and more, a amount of a impure forces. If you go further, it can broaden not just in a sense of individual, but it go further for the sense of nation. So Og, the king of Bashan, represent a forces of impurity. Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, represent a forces of sacredness and holiness. And here is a description of these two heavy forces, as you see in the Rosh Hashanah. Now it's a special time, that it's like the rabbi said, that it's a measurements, and they decided who will inscribe for good and who bad, etc. There are those forces that apply in both ways, in a sense of dualism that Rav Soloveitchik deal a lot, in a sense of a person himself, and a person as a part of community, and vice versa, as a community at large, and a community that reflects as individual. So in that sense of a duality, you have here a dialogue, and they say that the Almighty Himself, from the throne of glory that Ezekiel described, He interfered and He pushed the scale toward Moshe Rabbeinu, toward Moses. But the way that Sefer Yetzirah go to details, he express how that accumulate and how that expresses toward the force of impurity. So that's in a very short what the Sefer Yetzirah was quoted by the Maharsha on the back of our Gemarah. The next listed ta, ve'even she'yashav alea Moshe. Here they speak about the stone that Moses set. Again, you read at the end of the Parshat Beshalach, book of Exodus, at the end of the portion Beshalach, you read how Moshe Rabbeinu waged a war against the evil Amalek. Amalek was an evil nation that came to attack the Israelites for no base reason. And the scripture described Moses sitting on a stone, and he lifted up his hands, and as long as his hand is high, Joshua waged a war. His disciple Joshua led a war against Amalek, and he won. The minute his hand was down, the war was on the other side. And the Mishnah elaborates to that in Rosh Hashanah and tells us that that's not necessarily physical, that Aaron and Hur hold his hands, can be also metaphysical, which apply to the good deeds, that's basically created the winning of the war. But here we talk again about the stone that he set. So he said, Dichtiv idei Moshe kvedim, that the hands of Moshe Rabbeinu, of Moses, was heavy, grew heavy. Vayikchu even, vayasimu tachtav, vayeshev alea. So they took a stone and he set, and they put under him and he sat on it. So again, depend how you take it. You take it literally, or you take it. Rashi said, ואינו יכול לפושטן כל היום, אלא אם כן תומכים בזרועותיו. Moshe Rabbeinu cannot hold it all day, so they need some support for his hands. That's one school of thought. But the whole idea is that he has those mitzvot and prayer and good deed that help winning the war. So that's something, if someone in that sense passed by that stone, so you need to make that blessings of thanking. V'ishto shel Lot, you remember the story in the book of Genesis, how Lot's wife was warned not to turn around and look at the Sodom and Gomorrah destructions, meaning even to see the destructions she not deserved, and it was warned by the Malachim, by the angels, but she turned around and she turned to be a pillar of salt. So they said, Shene'emar v'tabet ishto ma'achorai, that the wife of Lot turned around and v'tihi netziv melach, and she became a pillar of salt. It's a famous Midrash that said that it was measure for measure. The same way that when they have a guest, part of the decorum of meal, it's serving the guest and bringing salt for the hamutzi. And she said to Lot, according to Midrash, why bother, etc. So she was punished in the same way. But anyway, so they tell us here that when you see it, you have to praise the Thanksgiving. I always remember when I go to the Dead Sea with the family, I have my little kids that see a huge stones there on the way, and they always said, oh, that's the wife of Lot. Anyway, וחומת יריחו שנבלעה, and the wall of the city of Jericho that was swallowed into the ground, וכתיב ותיפול החומה תחתיה. They said in the book of Joshua chapter 6 that when they crossed the river, the Jordan River, the first city that was captured is the city of Jericho, So they said that they circle around the city 7 times, they blow the shofar, and then Jericho walls around the city, all the walls collapse, and that's the Aleinu Leshabech that composed for Yoshua, was an act of thanksgiving. So they said, Bishlama kulinesi, we understand all the previous listed of miracles that we mentioned, that miracle that happened to the Jewish people, but why you put in that list, Ela ishto shelot puranutai, the wife of Lot, it said that she turned the pillar of salt, that was a punishment. So why you put that as a list of things that happen as a miracle and we're thanking? So the Gemarah responds and they said, the Amar Baruch Dayan Emet. So Rashi said, Terutzau, which means upon when Lot heard that, he said, thank God who is the true judge. What does that mean, thank God who is the true judge? It means that we say that we have to thank God for good and for bad. So when that happened, they're thanking God. So in that sense, it was part of that either you said because she was a wicked or because a justification of judgment. The Gemarah object that, and they said, "Veha hoda'a v'shevach katane." What we said that the person should be thankful and express his thankful to God. So they said no. The answer is nay. You should learn as follows: Al Lot ve'al ishto mevarchim shtayim. Upon Lot and his wife we have 2 blessings. Al ishto omer, on Lot's wife you said Baruch Dayana Emet. The same way as a person's, God forbid, hear a bad news, he tears his garment and he says, blessed are you, God, Master of the universe, who is a true judge. The same, and the second, ve'alot, and upon Lot one says, Baruch Zocher et atzadikim. Blessed are you, God, blessed are you, remember the righteous. What does that mean? So Rashi said, Shezachar et Avraham. What we said in the Zichronot in the Rosh Hashanah, we said that because of merit of Abraham, the only reason that Lot was saved was because of merit of Abraham. So that was part of what the thanking, that God remembered Abraham, and he did not. So remember, Abraham negotiated with God. Maybe there are 45, maybe there are 30, 20, maybe there are 10 righteous people in the city. And we said many times that the city on Sodom and Gomorrah not destroyed only because it's evil, and it's because the lack of 10 righteous people in those cities. So basically the reason that Lot was saved was because of Abraham. So the pillar of salt, it was a punishment for his wife, but it also in a way freeing Lot from his wife, and that was part of the merit of Abraham. And we derive from that, אמר רבי יוחנן, אפילו בשעת כעסו של הקדוש ברוך הוא, זוכר את הצדיקים. Even the time that God expresses his anger, again in our anthropomorphic, in our human language, the God expresses anger, he remember the righteous. שנאמר, ויהי בשחט אלוקים את הרי הכיכר, ויזכור אלוקים את אברהם, וישלח את לוט מתוך האפלה. Even at a time of tremendous crisis, that those angels destroyed those cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, which created tremendous death. At the midst of that tremendous crisis, God remembered Abraham, and he rescued, he sent out Lot at the midst of this upheaval. Then the last one, the last on the list, וחומת יריחו שנבלעה. We said that the city of Jericho, again the first city that they conquered in the land of Israel, so that city was swallowed into the ground. So what does that mean? So they said, "V'chomat Yericho nivle'a." You are telling me that the wall of Jericho was swallowed? V'hanafla, it's fell, it's not swallowed. Shene'emar, it's written, "Vayhi bishmo ha'am et kol hashofar, va'eriu ha'am teruah gdola, v'tipol ha'choma tachtea." When the people heard the sound of the shofar, so the people cry out, and the wall fell in its place. So what you see here, so they fell in a sense, is the same idea as that it was swallowed. So it's like an equivalent. How it happened? So Rashi here said, the Gemarah first said, "Kevan defutya veruma kehadeninu mishum ache abala balue," which means that it was a side of width and height that was equal. If you take, for example, you take a book, so you have a size and width, and everything is the same. So if it's move around, you see the same size. So Rashi said here, "Kevan deputya veruma kehadeninu ve'en nefila nikeret," but you don't recognize that it's fell. אם לא נבלעה, if it wasn't swallowed, משום אחרי הבלעה, והוא דרך נפילה לחומה זו, which means that it's either appear or it's really swallowed to the ground, and it's part of the miracle. So, originally you thought that it's all equal, but now we said the futya veruma, kevan it was a width and a height the same, you have to say that it was nivla, that it was swallowed into the place. Swallow, which means that it was part of the miracle. So the circle around, the blow the shofar, and it was in a sense swallowing. The collapse wasn't to go around, it just get down, which is a miracle. אמר רב יהודה אמר רב, ארבעה צריכים להודות. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav that there are 4 types that have to be thankful. Word of introduction. Tosefta said, ובתהילים לא חשיב כזה הסדר. If you look at the book of Psalms, we don't have this order of 4 people need to thank. אלא חשיב הולכי מדבר ראשון. דקרא נקט סדר המסוכנים יותר תחילה. וגמרא נקט המצויים תחילה. According to the biblical text, it's the most dangerous situations. Here we have more something that's more current in our current event, the current life. Introduction. Part of our prayer we said 3 times a day in the tefillah, in the Amidah prayer. Excuse me. We said, "V'chol hachayim yoducha sela." All the living creatures, thank you, Almighty God. Sela is one of God's name. So the rabbis derive from that the letters, the Hebrew letter Chayim, which is Chet, Yud, Mem. Chayim, the Chet is Chole, meaning sick person. First Yud is Yisurim, someone who involved with sorrow, physical sorrow, God forbid. Another Yud is Yam, meaning someone who's crossed a large sea and saved, or water involvement of miracles. And Mem, it's Midbar. Midbar is like wilderness, desert. So they said here, ארבעה צריכים להודות, there are 4 types of people should say thank you. How we say thank you? Soon you see that there is a bracha that's called Birkat HaGomel. We say that bracha at the front of Minyan at a certain time. When we do that, so they said when we have that decorum, but upon what? So now we go a little in a different order, but is the same idea. Yud, Yordei Hayam, which is those who cross the sea. Mem, Holchei Mid Barot, Mem, those who go through a big desert, or you call it also wilderness. Some say that you have to go any long journey. Some poskim hold that you have to say that bracha. Umi shaya chole v'nitrape. If someone was ill and he was able to have a recovery, full recovery. ומי שהיה חבוש בבית האסורים ויצא. If someone was a prisoner and get out, so it's a machloket about prisoner, what level? There are 2 schools of thought. There is one school of thought like Ve'ur Halacha and Rabbeinu Yonah, that they hold that any prisoner that was in a prison you need to thank God. Magen Avraham hold only someone who have a capital punishment, capital charge, that he is like heavy, like murder, etc., or something, that they have something very serious case, and he was out of jail. This is the one who need to express that Birkat HaGomel, while others hold that in any situation that someone is in a jail. My Chavruta in Ner Israel is a Iranian rabbi, so he told me 11 years ago, I don't know if you remember, but it was in Iran, 11 fellow Jews that was for no real reason suddenly was incarcerated, and they put them in a jail for no real reason, and everyone prayed for them, and it was a huge miracle that they are released. So just as another example, don't need to have a capital charge, you have to have just a reason that you are out of jail, you'll be thankful. Now we go to the specific. Since we mentioned 4, so we go to the specific. The first one, what we said, Yordei Hayam min Alan, those who are go on the sea, seafarers. We said, how do you learn? So there is a special psalm. It's Psalm 107. Now we're going to read many sentences from that psalm, and that psalm carry this, the first category of Yordei Hayam, the seafarer. This psalm, by the way, those who pray Nusach Sfard, like the Hasidim, they say that psalms before Mincha on Erev Shabbat. And this psalm is expression of tremendous thankful. So what they said, those who have a seafarer, they said, Yordei Hayam be'oniyot, those who go down the sea ship, הם ראו מעשה השם, they see the great deed of God. ואומר, ויעמד רוח שרה ויעלו שמיים ידעו תומו, that God raised the great wind, and you see the heaven and the earth, it's all changed. ואומר יחוגו וינועו שיכורות, they go like a drunkard, you look sometimes at a tornado occurrence, and it's frightening. ואומר, ויצעקו אל השם בצר להם ממצוקותיהם יוציאם, that they cry out to God at the time of crisis, and God released them. ואומר יקם שערה לדממה, it's all in that Psalm 107, that God make from storm calmness. ואומר וישמחו כי ישתוקו, and then he said that the seafarer rejoice, the wave they quiet. ואומר יודו להשם חסדו ונפלאותיו לבני אדם, so they give thank upon all this God tremendous help and kindness, especially at the time of great stress that he did to them. So today I'm full of stories. Since we talk about Psalm 107, my late grandfather, you see the new CD with the songs, some of them is for him. I remember about 45-46 years ago, when I was a very, very young, in my, if I'm not mistaken, either 4 or 5 years old. I was at his synagogue, at his small shul in Hadar in Haifa, in the city of Haifa in Israel. So I remember him, Rabbi Yaakov Yitzchak Weisblum, who is basically Hasidic Rebbe, reciting this psalm. And he was going around that small shul. He has like 2 apartments. In one side he lived with my late grandmother, and the other side it was his shtibur. And he was having this kapota, this Hasidic robe, and the gartel, the belt and the hat, special for Shabbat. And he goes around the room and shouting like the Karline Hasidim. He wasn't Karlin, but he was like a very high, strong voice. And he said that psalm with pouring his heart and shouting and crying and screaming. I was a little boy. I'm not sure if I was 5 or 6 or 4 or 7, about 45 years ago in that neighborhood. And I was listening to him. I was sitting there eating my ice cream. And then when he was done and people about to come to shul, so let's say if the services was like, let's say 7 o'clock, so he starts hour earlier with that psalm. And he recited that psalm 107, which is just a relatively long psalm, but it took him like, I presume, like maybe in my best recollection, half hour, 1 hour, I don't even remember, but long time. Every word, every phrase, and repeats it and screaming. So when he was done, I said to him, Grandpa, why is that? I was a little boy, very gullible, very naive, I have no clue what's involved. So he said, you're too young, I'll tell you when you grow up. He passed when I was about 10 years old. So later I was nudnik. I used to ask him, what is this, that you praying this psalm and this psalm so much? So in very short, he told me he was a Hasidic Rebbe in one of the Galicia, in the eastern Poland, in the eastern part of Europe, in Poland, a small city called Sviers. He actually was the grandson of the great Hasidic Rebbe of Zidichov. But he was like a Hasidic Rebbe. His shul is called Ateret Tzvi, on name of his grandfather. Great Hasidic Rebbe. And again, it's a lot of legends. He has those papers, Kabbalistic writings of his grandfather, the Zidichov Rebbe, that according to Hasidic talk, again, the Rebbe used to tovel in a mikveh with that papers, and if it's come dry, it means that it's real. I mean, Divrei Torah that he wrote. Again, it's above our understanding. But anyway, he told me that he had a great faith in his Hasidim. He had at that time, if I understand correctly, if I remember correctly, many. I don't know if it's applied to a couple of hundred or maybe thousands. But anyway, it was those moments that he predicted the Shoah. Now, he used to go to a place in those days, Czechoslovakia. It's called Marinsbad, Karlsbad. It's a place that he was part of the Agudat Israel in Europe. Agudat Israel, it's a very large organization in those days, especially in Europe. And they used to have a rabbinic convention at least once a year there. It was like a city of relaxation, Karlsbad, Marienbad, something like that, and he used to go there. And he was one of the speakers who talk in a very adamant, in a very strong way, that the Jewish people should get a certificate and go, which they call in those days Palestine. Unfortunately, many people thought that, what's wrong with the Rebbe? You became Zionist? What is this? But he made up his mind that he make it happen, and very short before the war, he just packed everything and he went to Haifa. Now, unfortunately, as much as he warned his followers to follow him, was relatively very few that followed him. As the way that I understand, in my best recollection, and again I'm back 40, maybe 45 years ago, it was him, his my father, my two uncles, my aunt, that came with the boat to Haifa. The other daughter, which is the wife of the Hasidic Rebbe, the Tolner Rebbe, she was born later. And he came there to the city of Haifa, and he get twice slapped on his face. The first big slap on his face was upon the disappointment of his own Hasidim, because he told them that the Shoah is coming. He expecting everyone to just get rid of their business belonging and followed him. And the way I understand, very few followed him, closed up everything. He gave up whatever it was, the shul, the mikveh, the school, whatever he has, and he just moved out. As a result, he came basically with nothing to Haifa. He has those apartments, Dmei Mafteach, which is a small apartment. One side it was the small shtibel, like his shul, and the other side was his apartment. And sure enough, really, if I understand correctly, it was like a matter of about a month or a couple of weeks, whatever it is, a short time, he was informed that the entire village expunged. Nothing left. He lost 72 members of his immediate family. He lost all of his followers, everything. Now, he was broken-hearted because he expecting all these Hasidim, all these followers, that they always said that whatever the Rebbe said will go by the Rebbe by fire, by water, right? We go, whatever the Rebbe said, yet the Rebbe said, pack your belongings and get out, and relatively very few followed the Rebbe. So I remember him, and again, that's my belief, that's my opinion. Not everyone in the family watching that will fully agree with me, and I know that, but that's my view. That he was very angry over that. I recall my conversation with him in those years, and as a result, he went above board. He never wore shtreimel since that time. The Hasidic Rebbe wore a special shtreimel. He went back to the big black hat. My father and my two uncles, who is a giant illuminary of the Torah world, he really forbade them to have anything to do with Hasidic rabbis. He never accepted any more kvitlach. People write the names and ask the Rebbe to pray. No, he doesn't want to see any. Doesn't want to be involved with all of that. He was so full of anger over the, in our language, disobedience of the followers that didn't follow what he envisioned. And he basically sent my father, my uncles, to a school that it's basically half secular, Yavne. And then my father went to Ponevezh, which is a Lithuanian yeshiva. My father graduated and get semicha, which was very early in those days, at the age of 22. In those in Ponevezh, which is the yeshiva that the great Rav Shach and others came out, and the chief rabbis of Israel in those days, Rav Unterman and Rav Nisim, which again, you talk about super giant scholars, they ordained my father at the age of 22, but again, it's in a sense as a Lithuanian, and my father became a Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshivat Tikvot Yaakov in Sdei Yaakov, which is a Moshav. He was Rav of Moshav and Rosh Yeshiva at the age of 23 and a half, before he even got married. My father got married at 24 and a half. But all of that said, the Moshav was religious Zionist, the Yeshiva was religious Zionist. My father had a black hat, but he wasn't a Hasidic Rebbe, and he never been a Hasidic Rebbe. Neither him nor my uncle that was a Mashgiach and Ram in Yeshivat Karlin, nor my other uncle, Uri Weisblum, which is a giant Mashgiach in Yeshivat Nachlat Alvim in Haifa, which is again, it's a branch of Yeshivat Ponevezh, Lithuanian Yeshiva. So you see the result of all of that, that basically it was some type of disappointment or strong rejection over the crisis that befallen our people and the reaction of certain people. I mentioned the second slapped on his face. The second one was with organizations like Agudat Israel at that time. They promised him the certificate. When he get to Eretz Israel, he will grant a certificate which help him to formalize his citizenship. As you know, lehavdil. In America, you can be a visitor, temporarily visitor, and now after 9/11 especially, to get a green card is a big story. So you see all this Israeli shul that I'm speaking once a week, how many people, have a hardship. Baruch Hashem, my family get here citizenship many years ago, but there are people who struggle with that. You have a green card, then you have citizenship. So he wanted the citizenship in order for the Britain not to throw them out of the country, because that's what they did. Either they killed them, they sent them to Cyprus. So he had that great promise, and when he went there to Yerushalayim, to the leaders of Agudat Israel, and he was a great, they said that they are sorry, they cannot help him, they are overloaded with requests. Now, how he was able to make a minyan at the early stage? Haifa was the red city, the Ira Aduma. Only secular people, communist in those days, strongly believe in communism, many people, and it was a port. People used to go to port to loaded and unloaded material. That's many people make a living over there. So I remember as a little child, Shabbos morning, you have 8 people in the shul. He needs to have a minyan. He already have a long white beard. Man at his 60 looks like 80s. He went downstairs in his apartment, in his small shtibel. It was a coffee shop that these people used to go early in the morning to drink coffee and then to go to the port. Non-religious. communist, red, whatever. They used to call Haifa the Red City. And they see this Hasidic Rebbe with, so he said, can you help us with the minyan? So they used to come and help with the minyan. And they, again, big slap on his face, the people who helped him to get his citizenship and settle in Israel was the extreme left people from the communists, those people who were helping in the minyan. So, but back to our subject, when it's come to Friday night, he poured his heart. And I was standing there as a 5 years old, or 6 or 7 or 4, I don't even remember the exact, but about 45 years ago. And he was going around that shtibel and saying that psalm, took him maybe an hour, pour his heart, and later I understand what he's basically saying, that he was saved and his family was saved. As we said, that the person should be thankful. If his grandfather saved, he should be also thankful. On the other hand, all the psalm describe the crisis that befall that person should be aware. So he said here, that's the Psalm 107, and we continue. The next example is Olchei Midbariyot. Mem is Midbar. Midbar is like wilderness. So they said, Olchei Midbariyot, דכתיב טעו במדבר בישימון דרך, עיר מושב לא מצאו. Those who wander in a desert, they lost where they are, and they couldn't find a desolation, they cannot find city. ויצעקו אל השם, they cry out to Hashem, וידרכם בדרך ישעיין, Hashem show them the straight path, and then יודו להשם חסדו. So they have to be thankful for God. So you go two ways. Either you go in the literal sense, that people, like we are in the army, in the service, and we lost where we are, sometimes doing training, or sometimes doing the war in Lebanon, or when we serve other dangerous places. So sometimes you depend on a prayer to find the right way. You use the azimuth, you use the compass, but sometimes it's not helpful. You lost. So that's one way. It's another phase that speaks in a general. When those who get lost, imagine that this year on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, you have the evil man from Iran, the president, going to speak in the United Nations on Yom Kippur. So try to comprehend what's behind that. Going in a desert while we are fasting, the Jewish nation are fasting, and express their atonements while he is preaching in the United Nations, Yimach Shemo, of the destruction of the Jewish state. Another example, if someone was sick and healed, דכתיב, it's written, אווילים מדרך פשעם ומעוונותיהם יטענו. Full because of their sinful path and because of their iniquities were afflicted. כל אוכל תתאב נפשם ויצעקו להשם לצר להם ישלח בו ריפאם יודו להשם חסדו. Which is again, that's Psalm 107, that they cry at the midst of the tremendous crisis. The crisis, basically, according to that text, it's created by a person itself. Person make a mistake, and then he create his own agony, and then at the midst of his agony he cried to God, but despite his mistake and his agony, God released him, and that's applied to Chalav and Itrape, someone who became ill and was recovered. And the last one is Mishaya Chavush Bebeit HaAsurim, if someone incarcerated in a prison. So the Chtiv, again, it's all the same Psalm 107. Yoshvei Choshech Vetzal Mavet, those who sat in darkness and shadow of death, Ki Himru Imrei El, because they rebel against the words of God. Veomer Vayachna Be'amal Libam, so God humbled the heart with hard labor. Veomer Vayizaku El Hashem Batzar Lahem, so they cry out to God at their distress. ואומר יוציאם מחושך ושל מוות, God pulled them out of the great darkness, ואומר יודו להשם חסדו, and they thank God for the kindness. So again you see this pattern, that is a mistake, they cry out at the middle of darkness, and God take them out. So being incarcerated in that interpretation, it's something that befall upon a person because of a mistake. You can go either Kabbalistically, that the past life, you can go by something that is not aware, you can go many directions, but the key idea is that he created a person its own darkness, but then when he realized, and he, like we said in the days of Oz, he have the charata, he regretted, he make teshuvah, he changed his way, then God pull him out of that great agony. So that's what we said, החיים, וכל החיים ידעו חסר להם, Amidah. We said 3 times a day, וכל החיים. Chaim is a chet, yud mem, which is chole, sick person. Yud is yisurim, someone who suffer affliction. Yud is yam, someone who go to the seafarer, which sometimes a sudden tornado, you don't know how it ends up. For example, or midbar, mem, that is a desert. So all of this need to say birkat hagomel, special thanking to God when they are released from that situation. Mai mevarech. Now the Gemarah asks, so what's the proper blessing a person should make at that time? Amar Rav Yehuda, Baruch Gomel Chasadim Tovim. Yehuda said, a person should say, blessed are you God, who bestow beneficial kindnesses. So for sure, some of the Meforshim said, like the Rif said, that you have to say B'Shem U'Malchut, with the name of God, and you have to say what we said in both Sfaradim and Ashkenazim, Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu Melech HaOlam, blessed God, Master of the Universe, Hagomel Chayavim Tovot, who did good for those who basically not necessarily deserve it, Shegmalani Kol Tov, that bless me with good. And we respond, Mishegomalcha Kol Tov, Gmalcha Kol Tov Selah, who bestow you very goodness, bestow upon you, continue to bestow goodness upon you, Selah again is name of God. Abaye add to that and he said, remember, v'tzarich le'oduyei kamei asara. When you reach that point of thanking God, which is a tremendous kindness of God, you should make sure that you do it in a quorum of minyan, or quorum of 10. Dichtiv, v'yiromemu b'kalam. Let them exalt God in what? Kehalam. Kalam meaning congregation. When people gather together of people. So that's the time that you should praise God, you should thanking God for the good. Rashi said here, וירוממו בקהלם בסוף פרשת המזמור, at the end of Psalm 107, that they basically, במקהלות, when you do it in many, it's a special way that we are thanking God. Then he said, Mar Zutra Amar, Utrei Minayu Rabbanan. Mar Zutra said that it should be 10, but out of the 10 people should be 2 Torah scholars. Tosefta said here, ועבדה לחומרה, ואפילו לי כתרי רבנן, ונהגו העולם לברך אחר שקורא בתורה, ודווקא בחולה שנפל למיטה, אבל חש בראשו במואב, ואינו מוטל למיטה, לא הרב רבי יוסף. So he said, Tosefta said that that's apply only to situation that someone who's heavily sick, but someone who have a stomach ache or a headache or things like that, it's not a reason to say הגומל. שנאמר, as it said, ובמושב זקנים יעללו, in a gathering of elders, we praise God. So Matkif la Rav Ashi disagreed and he challenged that and he said, ve'ema kulo Rabbanan. Maybe you said that the whole 10 people should be a Torah scholar. So he said, Michtiv bikhal zkenim. It's not written in the assembly of elders. It's written bikhal am. Bikhal am meaning in gathering of people. People, it's not necessarily scholars. Ve'ima be'asara sh'ara ma'utre Rabbanan. So maybe you say that it should be 12. 10 people at the minyan, and another 2 Torah scholars. Kashya. It's difficulty. So the bottom line is, it's a machloket. It's a different opinion if it's really needs or not. Some Mefarshim hold that it's preferable, it's advisable to have 12 and 2 Torah scholars. Others say that Torah scholars should be incorporated with the 10. But most of the Rishonim maintain that you don't need to have any Torah scholar, like the Re'ah, like the Ritva. Other Rishonim, Berualacha said it too, that you don't need to have Torah scholars at all. It's preferable, advisable, but if you don't, you can say Agomel. So for example, anybody, including ladies, if they need to say Agomel, so they can stay behind the Mechitza, and they can say Agomel at the time that we're done with the Torah reading, and we can respond to them if, for example, she deliver a baby, which is a great thank you to Hashem, she can go there at the time, for example, in the Mincha on Shabbat afternoon, and can say the Agomel, and we can respond even in that sense, but it's basically any one of the four categories, v'chol hachayim, all these four that survive, should be thankful by saying the Birkat HaGomel. Examples. Rav Yehuda chalash ve'itpach. Rav Yehuda was ill and was recovered. Ale gabei Rav Chana bagdeta ve'Rabanan. So they come to visit him, two great rabbis, Rav Chana bagdeta ve'Rabanan. Amrele, they said to him, Brich Achmana di avach nialan v'lo yavach le'afra. Thank God that you are here, not down in the dust, in the earth. Amar lehu, Tarun yatimi lo odui. Thank you very much, I don't need to say Agomel. Why? Because they said thank you, and he said Amen after them. So he felt like, done. I'm done with my job, right? I said Amen, so it's like I recite the blessing by myself. So there is a concept in Halacha that's called Shomea Keoneh. There is a response from Avnei Nezer that he elaborates on that. Shomea Keoneh, basically if you listen, so it's the same as your response. So since they're all thanking and he responds Amen, you feel it done. So said the Gemarah asked, I said, V'amar Abaye, ba'yodu ba'as be'asara. You should do it at the quorum of Minyan. So the answer said, yeah, they have a be'asara, there are 10 people there. Ve'ahu yikulo kamode, but the person himself didn't express it. The other people said, oh, thank God that you are here, not in the grave. So it's lo tzarich, no. The ane batrayu amen, because he respond amen. The minute you respond amen, you respond amen. So it's like he make the approbation. They like agree. Now we go to a new sugya, which is the idea of shimur, that the three things that need to have a special some type of protection. Again, we go a little bit more than just physical, literal. Even in those days it was a concept of demons. Here we're talking a little highest level, which is more metaphysical. Amar Rav Yehuda, shlosha tzrichim shimur. Three type of people need a special protection. Again, Rashi said that that's mina mazikim, that's the ancient demons. Ve'elu hen chole. So Rashi said shehu ra mazalo. Rashi said that because a sick person, his mazal is in our simple language, lucid but simple, they said like his luck change for bad. Lefichach, and therefore hashed mitgare bo, is like the demons start up with him. Vechen, the next one, chaya, which means a woman that gives birth. Again, this is the time that it's a tremendous challenge. What we said? Chole, I'm sorry, chatan, a bridegroom, vechala, the matnita tana, chole, chaya, chatan, vekala. So either you say that it's 3, or you said it's 4, but basically it's a sick person, a woman that gives birth, a bridegroom, a bride, or something that's similar to that. So the Kabbalistic said to us that it's like the mazel, the fortune. It's like we call it Nachash Kadmoni. It's a illustration of the other side, the side of the bad side. So they say that it's like the scorpion, the ancient Nachash was jealous of Adam and Eve. So they in that case here they're about to perform a huge mitzvah, which is building a new home among Israel, building a new Jewish home, new family, and therefore there is the other side that come around. So that's the idea that they need a special protections. By the way, that's halacha lemaaseh, that we have the tradition that the day of the wedding, the Chatan, for example, should have someone with him all day. That's part of the source why we have it. V'yesh omrim, and there are those who said, Af avel. That's apply also to someone who's mourner. So again, Rashi said here that demons liable to attack for whom they are jealous. The Torah scholar need protection. That Rabbi Yonah said that at that time all the deeds are very much scrutinized and they see if they're really worthy to their divine protection. ויש אומרים אף תלמידי חכמים בלילה, and there are those who say that the Torah scholar need a protection especially at night. There are Pri Chadash that say that it's not only at night, that even when they are awake, they need a protection. But basically, it's the idea that they need a special protection because they are in such a highest level, so they need bodyguards in our simple language. But I feel more comfortable, especially nowadays, not to talk so much about demons, but talk about all kind of forces or images, which is, like we said earlier, several dapim earlier, is that the certain decorum for Torah scholar, the certain proper behavior. The same apply to certain time, bride, groom, woman deliver baby, mourner, etc. That's people in a special state in their life, and therefore they should not be by themselves. That's I feel more comfortable in that interpretation. To wrap up the shiur, we're going, like always, with some practical halachot. First halacha is Shulchan Aruch Reish Yudchet 218. They said, if someone approached a place that it was a great miracle to our people, so you need to be very thankful. You should express it thankful. If you see a special occasion like a mountain, hills, seas, river, desert, or you see like a lightning, strong lightning, so Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 228 said, a person should say, Baruch, blessed God, Ose Maaseh Berachot, author, creator, the author of creation. Haroeh et hayam hagadol, one who see the sea. So this reference to a great sea, which is the Mediterranean Sea. Some said to the ocean, like Lechem Chamudot and Magen Avraham said, that's applied to the ocean. But anyway, you have to say, Baruch she'asa et hayam hagadol, bless you, make the great sea. That's the Tur. Some say that he recite blessing of the past tense, who made the great sea, in according to his opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. That's also the Rambam in Sefer Avad chapter 10. But it's all applied bizman shureo lifrakim. It's not applied if you see it all the time, but it's only in the sometimes come and goes. Then you said al bsorot raot, if someone, God forbid, hear a bad tiding, so a bad news, they whether they are bad for him or for others, Biur Halacha said the person should say, Baruch Dayan Haemet, blessed are you God, who is a true judge, and accept God's inscrutable will and judgment all the times. That Orach Chaim 222. The next halacha, it's a very important halacha. The importance of make a blessing of a miracle individually. So the conclusion, they said, Anisa de Rabim kule alma mechayva lebrochet. The Mishnah Berurah said in Orach Chaim 218 that for the miracle that perform on behalf of the multitudes, everyone obligates to say the blessings, but it's applied to something that's really happened to the majority. But and that's part of what we're saying Hallel. Anisa de Yachid iu chayav lebrochet. But if it's a personal miracle, so he, as individual, needs to make the blessing for that. And some hold that we said earlier that even it's to a father or grandfather, if he survived and then the son was born or grandson was born, so obviously they should be thankful. Baruch she'asa nisim le'aba or le'saba. There are some who hold that way. One who see the crossing of the Red Sea or crossing of the Jordan, haroeh ma'arbarot ha'am me'orot Yarden. So they said that when you're crossing this, you have to say, God will perform a miracle to our forefather in that place. That Orach Chaim Shulchan Aruch 218. Then we have halacha about Arba'at tzrichim leodot v'chol hachaim, 4 different types that need to be thankful. So we said those who go to the sea and successfully reach the destination. So those who walk in the desert and arrive peacefully in a settlement, or a sick person who was healed. Again, according to Tosefta, is a sick person real sick, or one who was in prison and released. So they have to do the Birkat HaGomel, and in all formulation of the bracha, and they need to do it at the form of the minyan, preferably by Torah scholar, but if not, then just in minyan. The Rambam said in Berachot, chapter 10, that it's very crucial to be grateful and to do it quickly, not to wait to go. So, for example, when I travel long distance overseas, So right away, the first opportunity, I do a gomel. Now, if somehow they don't give the person the aliyah, still he should go to the gabbai and said, doing the right before the uplifting of the Torah, etc., the president of the Torah, when he's a minyan, he should do the agomel at the first opportunity. And we said again, v'tzarich lo du yikameh asara, a person should do it at the front of 10 people. That's the quorum of minyan. The Magen Avraham said it, that the customer is to do it at the synagogue after the Torah reading. And what we said, patranu yadei mil'adui, if everybody said, thank God, and he said amen, so if one recite the blessing for miracle that behalf of someone else, and they did well in the miracle performed, heard of the entire blessing, and he basically intended to fulfill his obligation, so and he answered amen, so he's exempt from offering further thanks. That's the Mishnah Brura. But some rabbis impose some restrictions with regard to the ability of one recite of someone else's behalf. It's not so simple. Some hold that it's only if person is really not capable to say it independently.